That works.
I forgot to say Dad's going to do an intro. Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot.
I'm just the dad. No, you keep it. Okay. Good evening. We're the Salch family, as she just said. You may know us from Little Spots Farm. We've been around the Western Price Group quite a while now. We're here tonight to allow our oldest son, Hunter, share his life experiences. We've kept Hunter's journey mostly private, waiting for the day, sorry, it's a little emotional, waiting for the day when he chooses to share it himself publicly. That day arrived, and you're here tonight to witness his first ever public presentation, and to the first open sharing of his own story. This brings tears to our eyes, because 3 years ago, at the peak of his struggles, he would not have been able to physically stand here and speak to even one of you at a time. Tonight he stands here ready, willing, and able to explain to you his own story. Before I hand the floor over to Hunter, I wish to do two things. First, to give credit where credit is due. And second, to give some background from the parent's perspective. First and foremost, we give credit for our family's amazing recovery to our Creator, who personally led us through a series of understandings in answer to the earnest prayer of desperate parents. It was 3 to 4 years ago that we realized how serious our problems were, and also that medical science, medical treatments, psychology, counseling, and all of man's best offerings had failed us. Not only had they failed us, but they actually contributed to the problem. We came to the end of our own abilities and turned to the one who created the world that we live in for the answers. Slowly those answers became evident through what some may call coincidence or luck, but we know it was directly due to the hand of God. We thank Him for leading us through a series of revelations and for placing many special people in our lives that helped us along our journey. As his parents, we saw Hunter struggle with challenges all of his life. Each age brought new challenges to either replace or add to the challenges from the year before. We raised Hunter the common way, with all of the vaccinations, the common junk foods, and a wide variety of medicines whenever he was ill. We didn't connect the dots between the string of symptoms until he was about 7. Instead, we followed the conventional wisdom that each of these health conditions were isolated events, each to be dealt with in its own way. For 7 years, we did not realize that these things were all signposts pointing to a much deeper underlying problem. It was during his 7th year of life that we realized we were dealing with ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. And that's when we sought a way of rescuing our son from the downhill spiral that he was on. This is when we started the GAPS. After we'd been on GAPS diet for a year or so, an amazing thing happened. Hunter came to his mom and started explaining some things that he had experienced that even we were not aware of. These things had just disappeared over the previous months. We knew of all the external symptoms, but had no idea of the world that he lived in, within his own mind. Hunter does remember, and he's here to share those things with you tonight for the first time.
Hello, my name is Hunter. I am here tonight to share with you some of the things I remember about my life. Heavenly Father has blessed me with a memory that can remember things from when I was very young as 2 years old. I want to share this with you to inspire you and to offer hope if you or someone you know is struggling with these problems. There are 2 sides to most stories, and that is true in my story. There's the side that everyone around me could see, but then there's another side, the part that only I knew, the part that was inside my head. I did not share this story with anyone until after we had been on the GAPS diet for about a year. I realized that so many things that I had secretly lived with had disappeared. First, I will share what everyone could see. When I was very young, I would have outbursts about seemingly simple things, not just childhood tantrums by long intense yelling and hysterical crying that would last sometimes an hour or more over small events. Around age 2, when I started walking, I developed asthma. I would have severe trouble breathing after any amount of playtime. The doctors said it was childhood asthma and gave us an inhaler to use when it got too bad. About that same time, I lost the ability to fall asleep. Nap time ended for me around age 2. It was impossible for me to fall asleep. Nighttime trouble soon followed, as it would take longer and longer to fall asleep. Often it would be the middle of the night before I would sleep. Sometimes I would lay in my bed all night not able to sleep. Also, at that same time, my leg started hurting. My leg hurt so badly that sometimes I would fall down and could not walk for hours at a time. My mom took me to the doctor and they sent me for an x-ray. After reviewing the film, the doctor said there was nothing wrong. He explained it was just growing pains, so we went home. My leg would hurt and cause me trouble every week or 2. Loud noises were very scary for me. I would cover my ears and run away from things like fireworks, pigs squealing, saws, gunshots. When I was very little, I would just cry and cry. Loud noises would hurt. It was just too much for me to bear. When I was 3 years old, my parents took me to a fireworks show. I was very afraid of the sounds and cried in terror through the entire show. When I got older, I could anticipate noises and would run away as far as I could, blocking out all I could with my hands over my ears. Around this time, I would get terribly car sick. I could not take short trips in the car without vomiting. Even a trip to the store just a couple blocks away made me sick. When I was 5 or 6, my playtime changed. I preferred to be alone. My favorite activity was to find a spot in the house where I could be alone. I would lay on my back, hands and feet in the air, almost rolled upside down my head, pretending different things with my blanket. When my parents asked me what I was doing, I could not explain it to them. It was like a separate world I could not describe. I was very comfortable with how things were, and any change would scare me. Things like new car seats, furniture placement, seating at the dinner table, plates and silverware I would eat with, a new car for our family. These things would scare me. I kept a ribbon tied on my chair at the dinner table so that I always knew which one was mine. I could not sit in any other spot or use any other chair at the table. I had a certain plate that I had to use at every meal. When Daddy would talk about getting a new car, I would cry hysterically because I did not like change. One time my parents moved the dining room table into a different room, and I was very upset and afraid. I could not eat for a few days. Around age 6, there were times that I could not see. There were times when I could not walk because I could not see where I was going. These times would last for 15 to 30 minutes. One time, Mommy drew a picture on the chalkboard and asked me if I liked it. I could not see what she drew. All I could see was black, even though it was only a foot away. This darkness happened to my vision every day for a few weeks. My parents took me to the doctor for this, and they said not to worry, it might be low blood sugar. Sometimes I had other trouble seeing. When I would look at things, they would drift far away like they were floating away from me. They would slowly come back and then go far away again. Sometimes I would even see 2 of the object I was looking at. My eyes were always watering all day. It looked like I was crying all the time. People would always ask me what's wrong because they thought I was crying. When I started school, there were times that my brain could not focus. I had moments of blanking out, where I would sit motionless, unable to hear or talk, just staring straight ahead. This would last for 5 to 15 minutes. Other times, school assignments that had come easily to me would take a very long time. A math worksheet that I had learned the concepts for previously would take half a day to complete. About this time, we bought a new washing machine. It was one that had a clear front so you could watch it run. I would pull up a stool and sit in front watching it run for the entire cycle. When it would stop, I'd ask if we could please wash another load. It was more fun than riding my bike or playing outside. I enjoyed the pictures that were created while it was spinning from all the colors of clothes inside. They were beautiful. This wasn't just once or twice. I would spend time watching the washer whenever I could. At age 7 or so, my body started what I called shaking. It felt like my brain wanted me to shake. It happened all the time. My brain wanted me to stop everything and just shake. It interrupted everything I would do. I love reading books, and this made it really hard to read because I had to stop so often. I could not talk to anyone normally because I had to shake many times before I could finish a single sentence. While I was shaking, I could not do anything but shake. This happened constantly every day. At age 7, this began as mild shaking, a few times a minute. By age 8, it was strong shaking happening almost constantly, and each time it lasted as much as a half a minute. Many times it was so strong and so long that it was as if it was never going to stop, and my parents thought I was having a seizure. They took me back to the doctor and said I was having severe tics. He offered medication similar to seizure medication that could possibly lessen the tics. The medication had many dangerous side effects, so my parents decided not to use it. Instead, they started searching for some other way to resolve my problems, and through God's grace, we found the GAPS diet. While I was 8 years old, our family started the GAPS diet. It took only a short time for most of these things to disappear. I remember what it was like to be me before and after this, and how things that I thought were normal just stopped. One day, I started telling my mom about the things that used to happen to me that just didn't happen anymore. We sat down right away and journaled my experiences, and now I'd like to share with you my personal journal about what it was like to be me on the inside. I remember that when I was about 2 years old, the house would tilt around me. It would tilt completely over and then slowly come back to normal. This usually happened when I was in my room at night alone. It was not scary, and I was not afraid at all. This would happen pretty much every night. When I was 3, I remember seeing my dad's teddy bear in my bedroom. Instead of sitting still like a stuffed animal, it was running and hopping around on the bookshelf. This happened at night one time when I was alone. Still being 3 years old, I remember seeing tiny live sparkles in the air at night. It was only at night. Sometimes they would turn into tiny things, like round spaceships, cars, flowers, and other things that I don't remember. They were different bright colors. Some blue, yellow, orange, and green. I saw them both in my bed and when I was in my mom's bed. But it was more than just seeing them. I played games with them. I'd be laying down and they would float over to me. I would catch them in my hands, but when I would look in my hands, they would be gone. It was a really fun game. When I was 4 or 5, I would see things at night that looked like people. They were big black shadows. The only detail I could see was the shape of a head and a body. Some bodies were very big like gorillas, and some were smaller, even as small as children. I remember one time that one of the small children-sized shadows came to me while I was in my mom's bed. I watched it walk over to me. It looked like a small man. It came over and stood right on the side of the bed close to me. This made me very afraid. Another time when I was older, early in the morning, As the sun was coming up, I saw the shadow of a huge snake on the wall. It was moving and hissing. I could hear the hissing. There were times when I would look at something and it would slowly change into something else, usually something very scary. For instance, I would go into my parents' room at night, and when I saw them in bed, they would slowly turn into wild beasts. It looked very real. It was real. I could blink hard a lot and they would be normal again, but then slowly they would turn back into the same wild beast. Sometimes I would look at a pillow and it would turn into a scary animal. Or something like a piece of paper would form the base of something really scary. There was no way to keep what I was seeing normal. This would scare me a lot, so that I would have to keep my eyes closed in fear. When I was 5 or so, I had to hold my hands at a certain position, like this, always up touching my chest. I did it everywhere, at school, at church, at parks, at home. It was something I did all the time. Sometimes I would try to put them down, but they just came back up on their own. My hands stayed in this position all day long, every day, unless I was using my hands to do something. Another thing I remember about my hands is that I would bend my finger joints constantly. I'd play little pattern games, top, bottom, side, side. I had to keep doing it even when my hands were tired. I could not stop it. I could not control it. Sometimes I would use both hands, but mostly my right. I just always had to make these motions all day long. I had a hard time with new foods. I remember when we started raising chickens, Daddy told me that chickens ate bugs. I could no longer eat eggs because I was convinced that eggs had bugs in them. I didn't eat eggs for more than a year. A similar thing happened with sliced deli ham. I could not eat it because the texture of ham reminded me of the skin on someone's face, and I could not eat what looked like people. Also bacon, I could not eat bacon. I saw our family pigs eating grass, so I was convinced that bacon tasted like grass, and I would not eat grass. I never told my parents why I couldn't eat those foods. I just refused to eat them, and they were okay with that. Most of these things that happened to me stopped completely while I was 8. That is when we started on the GAPS diet. It only took a few weeks for most of it to stop, but some things took longer. Each time we do the introduction part of the GAPS diet, it helps even more than when we are on what is called the full GAPS part of the diet. It helps. We have done intro twice so far. I am now 10 and a half years old, and most of this is only a memory. In my heart, I feel a very strong need to share my story with you so that if you have a child or loved one that has similar challenges, you can know that the GAPS diet can help. My life changed when I turned 8 and started GAPS, and yours can do too. Thank you so much for listening. God bless everyone.